All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. And today I want to go over a piece of equipment here at the shack for the F1 Ultra. Had a lot of people asking me about the conveyor for the Ultra. Ever since I got it, I've been, testing it with other materials and that kind of thing. But I've just now got around to getting the conveyor put on there and doing a little testing with it. And I'm going to give you my opinion of where I think this thing falls and what I think the advantages or disadvantages to it are. And we're going to go through some of the testing that I did. So if you're into that, stick around. We'll be right back. All right, guys, so this is a setup. This is a conveyor. Like I said, when xTool reached out to me and asked me to take the Ultra, I originally wasn't going to get the conveyor, but then they decided they're going to send it out to me. It wasn't something that I requested, but I thought I would test it out and let you guys know what I thought about it. So as far as the assembly, when you get it in the box, it's really easy, guys. It more or less is all put together. One piece lifts out. You do have a bracket down here that requires you to install some screws to be able to index this to the base of the machine. And I will give it to xTool. This is the first time I've ever seen a company that makes lasers actually build in a way to index the bed space to the machine to try to make sure that it remains square and to try to make sure that it doesn't move. That's a pretty big deal. So that is definitely an advantage over any of the other machines that I have seen that have the movable beds and whatnot. Even so much as the predecessor, the F1. I think this little bracket being here, and I think that's a lot better setup. I kind of wish they'd have done something like that with the RA2 as well, but maybe they will in the future. But I have fashioned myself a little catch box, and all this is basically is during my testing, I can take this box, put it up here at the end, and just kind of set it right here at the end of the conveyor. And as the things come off of it, they kind of flip over and fall into the box. That's pretty much all the setup that was required to be able to run these tests. And I did over 100 of my little 25 millimeter tokens. I did 40 of the 50 millimeter. And then I did 10 business cards, both sides. And we're going to go over the results, and I'm going to let you watch the actual video of these things being done. And that way you can see for yourself, guys. That's the best way I know to explain this to you. 2 millimeters seems to be the margin of error. The expected margin of error for me is about 2 millimeters. So wherever I place the graphic, I would expect it to be somewhere in that area, but it could be any direction up to, from my findings from using the entire workspace, about 2 millimeters. So let's get over to the computer, and we're going to kind of go through some of the testing that I did, and I'm going to show you the video feed from the results. So let's move over. All right, guys, so according to xTool, and I'm on support.xtool's website right here, there's a link inside the software that takes you here. Not enough light, too much light, highly reflective materials that aren't reflective enough, too thick of items, too small of items. There's a lot of reasons why this may or may not work for you. So before you believe the hype and some of the videos that you see, just understand that if xTool themselves are giving you this many reasons why it might not work, then it might not work. So let's get moving on. All right, guys, so after several attempts to run this auto detect stuff, I go ahead and I'm going for it. And every time I got this little pop-up window to the left. And basically it says that due to unfavorable ambient light, the results may be not desirable, but I've got the light on 100%. So we're just going to rock on. All right, guys, so I want to show you both screens. As you can see, once you hit go on the first one, it engraves it. Then it pulls the conveyor over. What it's doing is it's taking a picture. It's trying to associate the image with the picture of the work area. And it uses a online cloud-based system to perform that task. So you do have to have internet access for this to work. And it's just going to run through and engrave those guys. Once it engraves all of those, the conveyor advances to the next little square of the work area and does the same. It's just repeat and rinse. And I'm letting this run real time so you can see exactly how long it takes And to me, it's really not going to be that much faster than if I had myself a jig and was placing 5 or 6 of them in there and, just placing them and putting the lid back down and hitting the button again. So as far as time saver goes, probably not that big of a time savings, especially if you figure the margin of error for us OCD people that do not find that 2 millimeters is acceptable. So it does what they said it does, but like I said, the results that I've had are very mixed. And I've seen a lot of other videos where, they engrave a bunch of stuff with it and we're saying what good results they got. And it's a matter of perspective, guys. I am very particular about placement on objects. And I've tried round objects with this and I tried the square. It actually seems to do a little closer job with squares than it does the round. These are 25 millimeter round, and then the little target area in the middle that I'm trying to hit is probably around 18 or 19 millimeters. So it did successfully strike all of them. Had no misses as far as like missing the material and hitting the bed. There were a couple that it just did not engrave that got passed through, but that could be due to placement near the edge and of the material and everything. So I did 100 of these things. It's going to be quite lengthy, and I apologize, guys, but you guys are asking me what my thoughts are on it, and I'm not one to candy coat things or mislead anybody. So I want you guys to see the results firsthand, and here they are. I'll also, if you'll stick around to the end of the video, I want to throw a couple of pictures of the products up there, and that's camera got a little banged up there, but we'll show a couple of pictures of the products at the end of the job so that you guys can kind of see the placement where all of these were and make your own decision. Like I said, the margin of error may be acceptable for your use, and if it is, then great. But I would, I just want to make sure you guys know that telling you how it is. But you can see I'm on the other end over there feeding the conveyor, and you're limited on how many you can put there because, like I said, if you put them in that area to where they're near the protective shield, it won't engrave them. So you have to kind of space them out a little bit and leave a gap between the different sets. All right, guys, so now that you got a kind of an idea of how the software works in XCS, I'm going to move you over to full screen for the laser view, and that way you can see a little better how the placement goes on this last batch. Even though we're running in faster speed, you should still be able to see the targeting and get yourself an idea of how well it does. Like I said, it's not terrible, but I'm OCD. If you look at that one in the bottom right corner right there, you can see it missed the line pretty good bit. That line that's burning them, I did that on another machine more or less just so I would have a reference of where the center of that circle was, just in case, I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But like I said, it hits most all of them as long as they're not near the edge of the work area. Occasionally you may confuse it and cause it to miss one. All right, guys, moving on to test number 2. Instead of the 25 millimeter circles, these are 50 millimeter circles with roughly a 25 millimeter circle in the middle of them to use to line up the logo. And we're going to be batching a batch of those out and bring you along for the ride there. So doing the whole mark your material process here, and all these little buttons and tabs and stuff can get a little confusing. But I'm trying to get everything lined up the way it needs to be, and then we're going to send it. So let's go see what it does. And you'll notice, once again, the left side of the screen over there, you're going to get that little thing saying that it may not be as accurate as you want it to be because of lighting conditions and so forth. So let's get started. All right, so these are a lot bigger pieces, a lot bigger target area. I'm hoping that maybe because they are bigger, maybe it'll assist in the calibration of the machine. This first one, this is the one I used to create the lineup with, so I would expect it to be pretty accurate. And it's going to move it out, and as you can see, it's acceptable. And now it's taking the picture for the second set. Now I only did 40 of these, But I'm going to go ahead and speed things up because this little pause between, you see how long it took it to take the picture, line everything up, and then send the burn. That's one more reason why I think that I would be just as productive with a jig. Just to be honest, I run jigs a lot, and as long as they're set up properly, I'm pretty quick about unloading them and reloading them. So, and with this machine, the one benefit is it has the slide shield. So you can just slide the shield up, unload, reload, slide the shield down, hit the button. And it just makes the workflow really easy. Some other machines, have the cone that you have to fumble around with and stuff. But the F1 Ultra, that is, the way they've got the shield constructed is an advantage to this machine. But like I said, no misses. It just, 2 millimeters. Just understand, 2 millimeters, give or take. And we'll buzz through these guys real quick. All right, guys, so 750% speed, which is 7.5 times faster than what it actually is. But this way the video won't be quite as lengthy. And as you can see, these are doing fairly well. But if you look right at the bottom of the screen, see the gap? It did make that one a little low. They're all going to vary some. And like I said, that's not something I'm used to with using my jig setups. And so if you're not as OCD as I am, maybe you'll love this thing. If all you're doing is putting a maker mark on the back of something and you're not worried about whether it's centered or not, then sure. But there you go. See those 3 right there? It missed those, but it was because they were underneath the shield, and that was operator error. So if you're going to be using this thing, just make sure you leave a little gap right there where that shield when it's going to advance, because it only advances so far and then it stops, and if they're under the shield, it's going to skip them. So it's like I said, it's wearing through them. Missed that one. You can see several of them. See that one right there in the center of the screen, basically? That, to me, using jigs, that's not acceptable. And the reason that I used wooden tokens for this test is because I didn't want to waste a bunch of materials, to be honest with you. All right, so for this test, it's pretty cut and dried, guys. When you put the piece of material down there, you're limited to about 500 millimeters in length. You put the dot at the very edge of the material, and it basically slowly slides it forward, engraving as it goes. And I will say, other than trying to make sure that your material is squared with the little conveyor, and also making sure that even though this little piece of material's got a little bit of a warp to it, you got to watch for that coming out the backside, because you don't want the material to get caught on the lens, on that shield cover. So I had to raise the shield cover up a little bit to afford it plenty of room to make sure that the material didn't get caught. But this turned out really well. It works great in this mode. So if you're wanting to just engrave longer cutting boards, or somebody asked me about the license plate that I did the other day. If this is what you're wanting to use this thing for, it works great for that. The AI, and guys, AI is what it is. We've all seen the 5-fingered or the 6-fingered images created with AI. It has its limitations. And I think the AI engine that they're using to do the auto placement, it has its limits. And I think 2 millimeters accuracy is about the limit for it. So we'll speed this up and move on to the next step. All right, guys, 10 times speed right here. If you notice, the way that I did mine is I lined up the edge of the material with the bottom of the conveyor. And yes, that material has a little bit of a bow to it. That's why we're using it for testing. But the machine does really good at this particular setup. So if what you're wanting it for is longer objects like this within the limitations, then maybe it'll work for you really good. The next thing that we're going to go through here, guys, is I'm going to knock out some business cards using the same auto alignment features that we did in the other videos. And I start out, of course, with the 1, because you have to have that to set everything up. And you can see how it looks there in the image. It actually turned out pretty well. Right now, the machine is calculating the next 2 engraves. It does take a few minutes, like I said. Could you load a jig faster than it takes the machine to do it? Maybe. But if you just don't want to be involved in doing stuff with a laser, you can do this. I was a little pleasantly surprised that they were actually as square and as centered as they are. I think the deviation on these was probably down to maybe a millimeter or so. Didn't really see, got one that skipped or two that got skipped right there. But as you can see, they're near the edge of the cover, and so it skipped over them. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab them and place them back on the other end of the conveyor and let it regurgitate them. It will attempt 5 passes before it just automatically times out the job. So if it takes you a second to get back over there to place some, ones it missed, not a big deal. It'll give you 5 advancements before it times it out. But it did, the business cards, the black square business cards, it actually did better than it did on the wood. Other than it keeps leaving that one for some reason. I don't know what it was with that card, but it was snake bit. I don't know if it had a smudge in the wrong place or what. You'll see. I kept having to put that one back in there. But all in all, the business cards did okay. A millimeter or so deviation, but better than it did with the tokens, the wood tokens. And we're going to let it keep running these other guys just so you guys can see. People are asking me, and guys, I don't want you guys thinking that I'm not beating up on xTool. There are limitations to all technologies. I know with what technology they have right now, this is a very challenging. The fact that it can do as well as it does, it says a lot for xTool. They're doing really well with the software and the technology that they have, but it's just not, to me, as accurate as using jigs, fixtures, whatever you want to call it, and doing it the old-fashioned way. Now, like I said, if you just don't want to do anything with a laser, I guess you could use this thing. But you can see I'm having to run those guys back through there again. So any time saved from using this, I'm gobbling it up by having to run them through there a couple of times. So these, I just kind of stack those guys right there. And you can see that I run a little hot power. So the cards are kind of wiggling as they're being engraved. But they didn't move. They just kind of stand up and go back down. But it kept missing this guy. This guy's like 5th time through there, and it just kept missing it. I don't know why. Watch this. It's gonna miss it again. I mean, it just kept missing it. So I'm gonna let you watch this because it is pretty interesting. I don't know what kind of camouflage that one card had, but yeah, there it comes again. So it's like there's no end. And I only did 10 cards, guys, but I did both sides. So it's not to waste a bunch of cards. And so that's what I'm doing now. Is just I'm flipping a lot of them over and putting them back over there. But yeah, all in all, testing went well. Is it precise? No. Does it work the way they said it would work? I mean, sure, yeah. Even xTool's reveal video, they showed some deviation. So I don't think anybody's argued that, it's 100% accurate 100% of the time. And there's that card that it just will not engrave. But I finally get the guy. I finally got it. It finally saw it. Put it in the middle of the work area. And I finally got it to see it. See, that thing's got stealth mode activated or something. Not sure what the deal is with it. But it's been through there like 8 times. It's a little, I don't know. It's an anomaly. But look at that. Finally got it. But anyway, guys, enough of that. That's the testing that I did. Let's bounce back over here and discuss it. All right, guys. So at the end of the day, I think the machine actually performed the best on the business cards. And like I said, you can see that they were not perfect as far as the alignment. But for what you do, maybe you think that is acceptable. And if that is acceptable to you, then that's great. Fortunately for me, I have gotten used to using jigs, and I've gotten used to being able to do such precise targeting with machines. I don't think the conveyor is going to be something that I'm going to see me using in the shop. First of all, as far as big objects goes, I have other machines. If you're one of those folks that don't have other machines and you want to be able to, engrave something this length, then yes, absolutely. You can do it with the conveyor. You're going to need to make sure that your material is square, and if you don't put it near the edge of the conveyor, the one thing that I think xTool kind of dropped the ball on for doing longer items is if they had placed maybe like some not a grid, but if they had periodically placed white lines on the bed material that rotates, I think that would give you something to line up with to try to index it so that you know your piece is moving perfectly with the motion of the belt. The real only way to do it in its current configuration is to line up the edge of your material with either the top or the bottom of the belt to make sure that it maintains a straight path through the engraving process. So maybe that's something they'll do in the future. Add maybe like a white thread in there, or a little piece of just some type of white indicator to use as an alignment tool for those type things. Another thing that I thought about that you could do is you could actually use painter's tape to create yourself a margin and then align your project with the edges of the painter's tape. That would be another good workaround to try to make sure that that piece, if it's not wide enough and you don't want to get it out of the middle of the work area, painter's tape would adhere to the bed and it should be able to go around the entire machine without causing any problems. So that's an option possibly. So if you want to try that, then maybe you should. But all in all, for longer objects, if this is the only machine that you have and you want the conveyor for that, okay. The batch function, as long as that 2mm variation is something that you can live with, then yes, for the most part, with the proper lighting, it's pretty good about grabbing the object, engraving it within 2mm, or either it just passes on it if it can't. So you're going to have that variation. But just know that if you're planning on batching things out, you're planning on doing things with this, that 2mm margin, if that's not acceptable, you're going to end up with, out of all of these wooden circles that I did, like I said, I did 100 of them. This is some of the better ones here. We scored them based on whether or not they were centered, whether or not they touched the line, got outside the line, and all in all, as far as being perfectly centered, you're looking at maybe 40% were inside that circle that was basically a millimeter margin of error. Many of them were outside the circle and just, weren't centered, but none of them missed the little token all together. So I was a little concerned that maybe some of them would miss and engrave the belt itself, but it either hit the object or it didn't engrave it at all. The 99 tokens I did, it did a really good job on those. It only missed one. The bigger objects, it missed more, the business cards especially, but it's because you have to take into consideration, and I didn't think about this in the beginning, it's basically just doing a little square, moving over, doing another little square. If you place your items in the wrong position and they're too close to the protective window, it's just going to disregard them. They cannot be in that little area. But for batching, guys, like I said, I watched a lot of videos and was trying to make sure that I was doing everything right in preparation for this. And apparently there's a lot of other people that are having a lot better luck with this machine and the conveyor than I have. But I'm just telling you guys, this is the testing. This is the results I had. You saw it. That's what it is. So hopefully this will help and help you make a decision. Like I said, if you're doing it for the longer objects, to be able to engrave longer objects, that seems to be very effective. I didn't have any hiccups or any problems with doing that. The automatic batching is dependent on the camera. And despite the fact that this is probably one of the better cameras in most lasers, it's still a single camera system. And depending on where the items are in the workspace, there's going to be more deviation toward the edges of the workspace than there are in the center. Now, if you could just have the conveyor do one at a time and put it perfectly in the center, you would have a lot better results than if you just lay them sporadically on the workspace. Because the further you get from that point of focus, the more deviation you're going to get. Just like with any other camera on any other machine that only uses one lens. You would have to have multiple lenses throughout the work area to be able to have any kind of hopes of having a sub-millimeter accuracy continually, especially with the larger work area. So all in all, not a bad product. It works. It's turned. It moves the material. The batch function, not really a fan of it. I won't be using it here for any of the blanks that I purchase because I'm afraid that I would end up spending way more on blanks than what I want to. So for all the other reviews, guys, I don't know. Get with them, find out the secret. But for me, I'm not going to be using the batch function. But the longboard function, we can go with that. So until next time, guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to check out the conveyor, if you want to purchase one of the machines, feel free. There's some links down below. And you can use those links and let them know that the Shack sent you. But until next time, be safe and have a good day.